In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a custom timer using custom JavaScript and AppPresser. So our custom JavaScript is on the settings page, and you can scroll down to custom JavaScript and you can upload a custom JavaScript file. If you click on help, it's going to take you to our documentation page, which describes it a little bit more. Now this is an advanced feature and it's only for people who know what they're doing with JavaScript. The app itself runs on Angular, and the custom JavaScript is not actually executed within Angular. So there are some concessions we have to make, such as we have a helper function called ready, which is going to find an element and make sure that that has been loaded on the page. And then you can do things like add an event listener, such as a click listener, and then execute a function. Like in this example, we are doing a window.open, which is going to open the in-app browser in the app. And another thing that we can do is use the social sharing plugin and share a custom message, whatever you want to put there. Those are just a couple examples. You can check out our documentation for more, but I'm going to show you how I created a custom timer. So let me first show you the finished product. If I scoot this over in here, this is the finished app. If I go to the more page and click on the timer, you'll see that we can click start and then stop, and we can also reset it. So it's very simple, but it's just kind of an example of how to use the timer. So I'm going to recreate this with you. So the first thing that we want to do is create the page for the timer. And I'm going to add a custom content block. So this timer is going to use a simple interface that looks like this. And basically we have a stopwatch right here, which is going to display the time. And then we have some buttons for start and stop and reset. So let me just clean this up a little bit. And what we've done with the buttons is we've given them an ID, and these IDs, start timer, stop timer, and reset timer, these we can actually use in our custom JavaScript. So we can find this ID of stopwatch, and then we can use the IDs on the buttons for our click actions. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to my, okay. I don't know, I'm just going to pick something random for now, it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to save that. So once again, like the other items, we want to hide this one. We don't really want it in the tab menu. So I should have hidden it when I created the page, but that's okay. I can go back, go to the timer, add an extra class of hide. So if I go to the more page, I'm going to change the slug that I linked to timer-3, and then that will link to our timer page. So I can go over here and see the timer, and what I'm going to want to do is edit that with some CSS and kind of make these buttons and everything look nicer. So I have some existing CSS that I'm going to just copy over from my app, since I don't want to take up all of our time in this video doing CSS. But if I go over to the design tab and I can paste in my CSS here, and let's see, one thing that I didn't do, let's see, list. Okay, there we go. And I also want padding 0, okay. Okay, so here then we have this UI for our timer, and we have a start, stop, reset button, we have some IDs. So this gives us something to work with now with our custom JavaScript. So in our custom JavaScript file, if you go to the help, you'll see that we need to start it with an anonymous self-executing function. So we're going to need to create a JavaScript file. So you can create any JavaScript file, or you can create one anywhere on your local computer and then open up your text editor to edit it. So I've created a blank JavaScript file and I've opened it up in my text editor. So if we copy and paste this self-executing anonymous function wrapper here, you don't need to know what that is, doesn't matter, then I can actually write my code in here. And if we go back to the documentation, you're going to see that we need to use this ready function as well. So I'm going to copy and paste that. And the ID that we have for our stopwatch is the stopwatch, and then we can go ahead and execute our code in here. So a good idea is to put a console log at the top of the file here, just say file loaded, and that way you're going to know if your custom JavaScript is being loaded, and then put other logs in here and say stopwatch ready, and that way you'll know kind of just everything that's happening in your script, because it's a little bit of a pain to debug this kind of stuff. So once we're ready with our stopwatch, then we want to actually add our JavaScript code for our timer. So I'm going to go ahead over to this finished file and just kind of go through this with you instead of writing it all from scratch. But basically we are going to grab our elements, our button elements, and then we're going to add an event listener for click, which is saying, hey, when this start timer button is clicked, this is what we want to do. We want to do start timer. And then down here we have our start timer function defined, and this is actually just code for a JavaScript timer that I found on the internet. So I'm not going to go through all of it with you, but I basically just changed it around so that it would work in the app here. But you can see the general concept. Inside of our ready function, we're going to grab our element and add our event listener. And then we define our functions that we're going to use outside of the ready helper function there. So this is just basically running through a timer function that's going to, handle changing the seconds in our UI. It's going to add a timeout, for every second. We're going to run this again and add 1 second and then update our timer UI. And then reset timer is going to set everything back to 0. Stop timer is just going to stop our interval from running. So once we have this all figured out, what we're going to do is upload this to our app. So let's go back to our app here. And what I'm going to do with this custom JavaScript file, I'm going to upload it and then click choose file here. And then I'm going to save it. So this file is actually embedded in the device. So when we make a change to it, we're actually going to have to rebuild the preview, because that's going to recompile the app and insert our custom JavaScript file into it, so that when we load up the app, it's going to run our custom JavaScript file. So once our app preview has been rebuilt, we can go over and test out our timer. So you may need to open up your developer tools and click refresh, which is going to clear the cache, because the custom JavaScript file gets easily cached. And you'll just want to make sure that you see that it's being loaded. So if you have a console log that's saying that your file is loaded, you'll be able to see that when you refresh the app. So for example, if I refresh here, I'll see a bunch of messages, but I'll also see custom.js loaded. If you see that, I don't know if you saw that go by over here, custom.js loaded. So I know that my JavaScript file is being loaded. And that's important because you may want to even update that with each version with a version number or something, so that you can make sure that it's not being cached. So once we can do that, we can go over to the timer. I know that it's being loaded, and then I can click on start. And I have some other logs that are just kind of helping me here that I see are working. I see it stopping, and then I can also reset. Looks like everything's working, so that's excellent. So that is the timer. That is the custom JavaScript timer. And what the next thing that we're going to do is we want to add that timer to all of our posts. And so if we go into a WordPress post and we click into it here, we want to show this timer here at the bottom and then also have it working here. And to do that, we are going to use template hooks. And so I will cover that in the next video.